The story begins as a woman named Lin Z walking out of her hometown airport, her son Bao by her side, holding her hand. While waiting for their car, Z's absent-minded gaze scans the surroundings, triggering recollections of a nightmare she experienced during a plane nap. Suddenly, a wave of anxiety hits her, heart racing as painful memories resurface. Crouching in front of her son, Z's hands tremble, shivers racking through her body, as if the weight of the past is crushing her. This moment resurrects a haunting memory of a night-long past, buried deep within her. Images of fear and pain flash before her eyes, forcing her to relive the soul-scarring horror. Though tears well up, she resolutely fights back, not wanting to burden her young son with her pain. Bao, albeit young and perceptive, immediately notices his mother's sudden condition. Concern fills his innocent eyes as he brings his chubby hand to her forehead, pressing it gently against her skin to check for a fever. The warmth of his touch and the genuine care in his gesture provide a momentary respite from Z's inner turmoil. It's in that touch that she finds a flicker of hope, a reminder of the unconditional love her son holds for her. His voice quivers slightly as he asks if she is all right because she appears to be sick. Z musters a weak smile, her voice filled with tenderness as she assures him that she's okay and that it's just a momentary discomfort. He reminds her not to worry, his voice filled with childlike innocence and trust as he tells her that his uncle, Z's brother, will be coming soon. It's as if he believes his uncle's presence alone can chase away the darkness that has momentarily clouded their joyous reunion. Right on time, Bao spots a car that he recognizes as his uncle's, and he excitedly dashes towards it, ignoring his mother's plea to wait inside the car. A man attends a business phone call, discusses a case, and informs his driver that the board meeting has been postponed by an hour. He instructs the driver to turn the car around and head back to the firm. The driver acknowledges the instructions, but before he can start the car, Bao jumps into the back seat and onto the man's lap, tightly clutching his stuffed bunny. In his innocent assumption, Bao believes the man to be his uncle. Reacting swiftly, the driver, aware that Mr. Li, his boss and the sole heir of the Li family, does not have a nephew, wonders how this could be possible. Before Mr. Li can say anything, Bao leans back and realizes his mistake. Upon properly looking at the man, confused, he asks Mr. Li who he is and where his uncle is. The driver, now certain of his earlier suspicion, scolds Bao sternly, informing him that it's not his uncle's car and that he should get off. Bao quickly apologizes for the misunderstanding and the disturbance caused. Impressed by Bao's manners and politeness, Mr. Li silently praises the education he must have received from his family, assuring Bao that it's okay. Bao, in turn, admiring Mr. Li's appearance, compliments him and asks if he has a girlfriend. The driver is astonished by how this young boy is playing matchmaker. In a rush, Bao hands Mr. Li a card, explaining that it contains his mother's photo and suggesting that Mr. Li can contact him if he's interested. With that, Bao jumps out of the car, leaving Mr. Li bewildered by the unexpected turn of events and holding a piece of paper with a cartoon-like drawing of a woman. Meanwhile, Bao happily trots towards his worried mother. Z gently scolds Bao for getting into a car without confirming if it belonged to their uncle or not, urging him not to do it again. Bao clings to his mother's legs, expressing how much he missed his uncle and apologizes for disturbing her. At that moment, Z hears the man whose car Bao jumped into, demanding the driver leave as his car window was rolled down. As the car speeds away, she remains shocked, recognizing the familiarity of that voice. Continuing to wait, Z murmurs to herself, wondering why her brother hasn't arrived yet. Suddenly, she feels a presence behind her and turns around, relieved to see their ride has finally arrived. A man greets them joyfully, addressing Lindy as his sister. Bao wastes no time and runs straight into his uncle's open arms, eagerly lifted up in a loving reunion. They settle into the car, and Bao excitedly shares with his uncle about the handsome man he encountered. Dreamily, Bao declares that the man was so handsome he could be his dad. Teasingly, Bao's uncle asks him if the man is better looking than himself. With a mischievous grin, Bao cheekily replies that the man was just as handsome as his uncle. Suddenly, Bao recalls his mother mentioning that his father was from their hometown and asks if they could visit him. Z holds her son closer, her heart heavy as she gently reveals that their father is no longer alive. She silently wonders why Bao wants to meet a man who is cruel and destructive. However, undeterred by his mother's response, Bao cups her face tenderly, his eyes filled with unwavering love, and asks if he can have a new dad. Z, overcome with emotion, is upset by Bao's insistence on his father. She sadly questions if he doesn't enjoy being with her, feeling as though she may not be enough for him. Sensing his mother's sadness, Bao embraces her, assuring her that he is happy with just her, but having a daddy would mean there would be two men to protect her. Z is moved by her son's sweetness and assures him that she only needs him in her life. Realizing there is no point in arguing further, Bao believes it is now up to him to find a father. He remembers the cards he had sent out, similar to the one he gave Mr. Li, and hopes that he will receive a call soon. In his office, Mr. Li reminisces about the encounter with the adorable child, his gaze fixed on the card he received. There's a mixture of curiosity and warmth in his heart, wondering what fate has in store for him and how this unexpected connection might change his life. Back at Bao's uncle Lin Shen's home, they all settle in. Shen tells his sister that she can live there, and he'll find a school for Bao. Z thanks her brother, who reminds her that there is no need to be too formal with him since they are siblings after all. 2 days later, Z waits at an agency from which she received a job offer. She has realized the importance of being financially independent as Bao is growing up and has various needs. Reflecting on her work, she memorizes her script while feeling content that even though it's a supporting role in a film, she has dialogue. As she is going over her lines, a woman enters the room and hollers at her that it's time to start. However, Z's attention is diverted by her phone ringing. She picks up her brother's call only to find out that Bao is not at home. Worry and panic engulf her, causing her phone to slip from her hands and fall to the floor. She hastily rushes towards the exit, informing her boss that she must leave due to an emergency. A co-worker of hers seizes the opportunity to taunt her, questioning her boss if he hired someone so irresponsible and if he is facing a shortage of actresses. Hearing this jab, Z's boss yells at her, asking if she truly wants the job. Burdened by her son's safety and the mounting anger she faces at work, tears well up in Z's eyes as she tries to explain to her boss the urgency of the situation. However, he fails to understand and continues to berate her, even going so far as to threaten to fire her if she leaves immediately. Upon hearing this, Z realizes that her son's well-being is her top priority. With determination, she apologizes to her boss and states that she is quitting her job as her son's safety holds greater importance to her. Storming out of the agency, Z hastily flags down a cab but abruptly stops, her heart pounding in her chest as she realizes that she has no clue where her son could be. Wallowing in a sea of worry and fear, her mind races with worst-case scenarios. Just as despair threatens to overwhelm her, her phone rings, jolting her back to the present. Trembling, she answers the call, her voice filled with a mixture of anger and desperation. She hears a man's voice asking if she is Bao's mother. She demands to know who is on the other end and where her son is. With her heart in her throat, she waits anxiously for an answer. To her surprise, the voice on the other end belongs to Mr. Li. His calm and composed demeanor contrasts sharply with Z's tumultuous emotions as he explains that Bao accidentally got into his car. In Mr. Li's office, Bao slumps on the sofa, lazily sucking on a lollipop with a tinge of disappointment in his voice. He musters the courage to ask Mr. Li the painful question that has been lingering in his mind, whether Mr. Li is truly uninterested in Bao's mom. Annoyance flickers across Mr. Li's face as the interruption disrupts his work once again. He assures Bao for what feels like the umpteenth time that he genuinely has no romantic interest in the kid's mother. He vividly recalls repeating this sentiment 19 times, hoping to put an end to Bao's relentless questioning. Bao's hopeful resolve crumbles, and he can't help but feel a sense of sadness wash over him. He looks out the office door, eyes wandering aimlessly, only to spot two women outside. Their hushed voices and pointed gestures draw his attention momentarily, distracting him from his own worries. Suddenly, the office door creaks open, and time stands still as Bao's mother walks in. Z, who had been frantically searching for Bao in this unfamiliar company, unintentionally overheard a conversation between the two women. They were speculating about whether Mr. Li had a son, perplexed by the idea as he appeared to be unmarried. Realizing that they must be referring to her son, Z stormed into the room. Upon hearing his mother's familiar voice, Bao ran into her arms, his face lit up with pure joy as he relished the warmth of her hug. Z, relieved to have found her son safe, held him tightly before gently placing him back down. Crouching down to his height, she looked into his eyes, a mix of concern and love in her gaze. She reprimanded him for getting into a stranger's car, emphasizing how worried she had been. Aware of his mother's unconditional love, Bao pulled a playful, innocent expression, attempting to melt her heart. Shyly, he explained that he had intended to get into his uncle's car but mistakenly entered the wrong one, realizing his mistake only after he was inside. Before Z could say another word, Bao cleverly changed the subject, pointing at Mr. Li and remarking on the coincidence of seeing the same handsome man from the airport. Stunned by this series of events, Z stood rooted to her spot, trying to process everything that had just happened. As Mr. Li approached her, he asked if she was Bao's mom. Slowly coming back to the present, Z stood up and extended her hand for a handshake, introducing herself and expressing her gratitude to Mr. Li for taking care of Bao. However, Mr. Li rudely left her hand hanging and turned around dismissively, telling her to look after her kid. Sensing the tension, Bao ran up to Mr. Li and grabbed his shirt, tugging at it while imploring his mother to repay Mr. Li's kindness by treating him to a home-cooked meal. Bao echoed Choi's words about repaying those who helped them. Z glared at Bao, hoping he would understand the unspoken message and drop the idea. She couldn't comprehend why he would invite a stranger into their home for a meal, but Bao remained insistent, tugging at Mr. Li's shirt and assuring him that his mother was an exceptional cook and that he would thoroughly enjoy the meal. Bao had captured Mr. Li's attention, causing him to turn around and respond. But then he noticed the necklace around Bao's neck, his gaze freezing as he looked at the necklace and recognized the golden ring attached to it. The sight left Mr. Li speechless, his mind was flooded with memories and a mix of emotions. Li was abruptly brought back to reality as Bao called out to him once again, seeking a response. Making a quick decision, Mr. Li agreed to the meal, affectionately ruffling Bao's hair. Filled with excitement at Mr. Li's acceptance, Bao wasted no time and dashed towards the exit, tugging Mr. Li along with him. Z followed behind, taken aback by their sudden agreement without consulting her. Mr. Li's secretary called out to them, reminding him of an upcoming afternoon meeting, but her words went unanswered. Even she was left astonished, wondering what could have transpired to make the typically cold and handsome Mr. Li agree to a child's invitation. As both Mr. Li and Bao entered the elevator step by step, Z lagged behind, her mind filled with questions about the unfolding situation. Bao called out to his mother to join them on the left, breaking her trail of thoughts, only for the silence to settle in the lift once the doors closed. Bao's actions had led Z to allow an unknown man into their home for a meal, and she resolved to have a conversation with Bao once their guest had left. Upon arrival at their residence, Z immediately headed to the kitchen to cook, leaving Bao to entertain their guest. Bao eagerly told Mr. Li that he wanted to introduce his mom before she finished cooking, presenting a paper art piece she had made. He praised his mother's artistic skills, claiming that she was remarkably talented. In response, Mr. Li inquired if Bao always spoke highly of his mother to others. Engrossed in climbing the couch, Bao told him that he only promoted his mother to the right kind of man, not just anyone, an ordinary man wouldn't do. Bao proclaimed that his mother was like a fairy, helping Bao up onto the couch. Mr. Li, somewhat annoyed internally, questioned if Bao truly regarded his mother as a fairy. Then his gaze shifted to Bao's necklace, prompting him to recall the reason he had initially approached them. His agenda clearer in his mind, he pointed at the necklace, catching Bao's attention in the process. Bao, confused by Mr. Li's inquiry, took off his necklace and handed it to him. He asked if this was what Mr. Li was referring to. As Mr. Li closely examined the ring in his hand, confirming his own suspicions, Mr. Li remembered giving this ring to a woman. There was no mistaking it, as the ring had his name and a special date engraved on the inner side. Leaning in closer, he asked Bao where he got this ring. Recalling the memory, Bao replied that his mother had given it to him, explaining that it had been left by his father. Suddenly, everything clicked for Mr. Li. Was Bao his son? He was filled with a mixture of shock and wonder. Returning the ring to Bao, he asked if Z had ever told him where his father was. Bao's face turned sad and teary as he replied that his mother had told him his father had passed away. Looking at Bao's dejected expression, Mr. Li felt anger welling up inside him, questioning Z's sanity for telling Bao that his father was dead. Blinking away his tears, Bao shared with Mr. Li his reason for wanting his mom to find a father figure for him. He explained that having a father would protect his mother from bullying and bring them happiness. Concerned for the child's well-being, Mr. Li asked Bao how he had been doing all these years. Bao assured him that he was fine but worried about his mother. This revelation made Mr. Lee also concerned for Z, realizing she had likely faced hardships during these years. As he stood up, Bao once again tugged at Mr. Lee's shirt, asking if he had become interested in being his dad after getting to know everything. Bao assured him that he rarely showed such friendliness to anyone else. However, Mr. Lee's phone began to ring, interrupting the moment. Without offering an answer to Bao's question, Mr. Lee stepped away to take the call. On the call, he could be heard saying that he would return soon, causing Bao to worry that he was leaving. Lee ended his call and instructed Bao to let his mom know that he was leaving. But before doing so, he handed Bao his business card, asking him to call if needed. Bao happily grabbed the card from Mr. Lee and examined it with excitement. Unbeknownst to him, Mr. Lee glanced at Bao's hair, noting the striking resemblance in color to his own. It sparked a thought in Mr. Lee's mind that he should get a paternity test done to confirm his suspicions. In a swift move, he plucked a hair from Bao's head and swiftly made his way towards the exit. Oblivious to what had just happened, Bao stored the card in his backpack, joyful that he had received a card from a handsome man. Z walked out with the meal and noticed Mr. Lee's absence. She asked Bao where he had gone, and Bao mischievously teased her for being too slow. Not caring much about Mr. Lee's disappearance, Z placed the meal on the table and called Bao to come and eat. As Bao sat down, his eyes gleamed with anticipation at the delicious meal before him. Playfully, he remarked that he had set up a perfect situation, but it had been wasted by his mom. Taking charge, Z sternly told Bao that they needed to have a serious talk. She reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder, urging him not to invite any strangers into their home and emphasizing the potential dangers they could pose. Innocently, Bao leaped to Mr. Lee's defense, claiming that he didn't look like a bad man. Z was taken aback, wondering why her son held this man in such high regard. When she tried to reason with him, Bao simply replied that Mr. Lee was as handsome as him. Fed up with Bao's antics, Z firmly told him not to judge people based on appearances. She wanted to convey the message that if he didn't listen to her, she would send him abroad immediately. The fear struck Bao, and he promised not to repeat his actions, looking up at Z with pleading puppy eyes. Meanwhile, Mr. Lee had received the reports from the paternity test, adding to the unfolding emotional tension in the story. Lee listened attentively as his secretary read out the report, confirming that Bao was indeed his biological son. The weight of this revelation hit him, and his mind drifted back to that fateful night years ago. He remembered Z's tear-streaked face in his memory and compared it to her timid smile today. The realization dawned on him that she was the woman he had encountered all those years ago. In that moment, as his secretary turned around to leave, Mr. Lee's cold expression transformed into a small smile. After years of searching, he finally found her. Standing outside the agency's entrance, Z hesitated, questioning whether she should really go in. The last time she was there, she had left abruptly due to Bo's emergency and made a scene by announcing her resignation in front of everyone. Returning now meant subjecting herself to potential mockery and criticism, but as a mother, she knew she couldn't let her pride get in the way. She had to be strong and tolerant for the sake of her child. She, on the other hand, was worried about the criticism she might face for leaving abruptly the last time because Bao got lost. She told herself that she had to be tolerant for life. A girl with purple hair questioned Xi's audacity, wondering why she had more than her despite both being hired in the same year. She apologized to Mr. Hua for leaving suddenly and asked for another chance. Mr. Hua questioned whether she saw the place as a charity organization, reminding her that he had told her not to come back. She promised it was the last time, but Mr. Hua pointed out that show business did not lack beautiful actresses and questioned her confidence. Ji argued that while there were many beautiful actresses, the industry lacked actresses with both beauty and excellent acting skills. Mr. Hua told Ji not to flatter herself, but internally acknowledged that Ji was indeed the best among the new actresses. The girl with purple hair suggested to Mr. Hua that they needed a stand-in and proposed, giving her a chance. She then thought to herself that she couldn't return the role she had taken from Lin Ji. Mr. Hua asked if someone would like to be a stand-in, to which Ji eagerly agreed. The girl with purple hair reminded Lin Shi that she had helped her get the opportunity and that she should be grateful. Sher Dai questioned if the girl was kind enough or simply afraid that she might reclaim the role that rightfully belonged to her. The girl with purple hair warned she not to be too proud and assured her that she would not regret her words. She remained silent, deciding to wait and see. At that moment, bodyguards arrived, and one of them asked Lin Shi to accompany them. She inquired about their identity and destination. The person assured her they meant no harm and that their boss wished to see her. Jue questioned who their boss was as she was escorted to the car. The bodyguards told her she would find out soon. Upon arriving at a magnificent palace, Jue was greeted by maids urging her to follow them. She was astonished by the number of maids and wondered who had requested her presence. When she saw Mr. Li, she recognized him as the man Bao had invited to her home previously. Bao appeared and explained that the impressive man had brought him there and given him many snacks. She asked Mr. Li why he had brought them there, mentioning she had already thanked him for his help. Mr. Li cryptically mentioned the rumor of Bao's father's death, prompting she to question his intentions. Mr. Li instructed the bodyguards to take Bao upstairs, and they complied. As the bodyguards were taking Bao upstairs, he called out for his mother, expressing his reluctance to leave her and his desire to protect her. At the same time, his mother asked Mr. Li what he wanted and what he meant by his actions. Mr. Li told her to stop pretending and pointed out that Bao was his son. Ji, upon seeing something, thought to herself that the probability of paternity was 99%. Shocked, she questioned what she was seeing. Mr. Lei explained that it was a paternity test report confirming that Bao was his son. Ji realized in disbelief that Mr. Lei was the man she had met 5 years ago. Ji expressed her hatred for Mr. Lei. He offered to compensate her, promising to fulfill any requirements she had. She questioned whether he could compensate for the time she had lost and warned him not to appear before her again, threatening to beat him if he did. Mr. Li insisted that Bao was his son and should return to him. She paused and asked for clarification. Mr. Li clarified that Bao's surname was Li. She declared it impossible, stating that Bao was her son and she would not give him to anyone. Mr. Li argued that he could provide Bao with a better life, questioning she's ability to care for him due to her lack of fame and money in showbiz. She asserted that her privacy should be respected. Mr. Li insisted on knowing the kind of woman his son's mother was. She addressing Mr. Li by his full name, Li Pain warned him not to think about taking Bao away from her. Mr. Li suggested a solution if she did not want to leave Bao. He proposed marriage to her. Mr. Li suggested that since she was unwilling to relinquish custody of his son and considering that Bao had taken a liking to her, it would be best for his son to grow up in a complete family. Hence, he proposed marriage as the solution. However, she, in a state of anger, firmly declined, stating she would not marry him. Mr. Li clarified that it was to be a contractual marriage, where she wouldn't have to fulfill the duties typical of a legal couple, but simply care for Bao. This led she to ponder over the nature of a contractual marriage, suspecting it wasn't a temporary decision, but rather a trap he had set with a prepared agreement. She agreed to his proposal on the condition that their relationship remain a secret and that he not interfere with her private life. Mr. Li gave his word and urged her to sign the agreement if there were no further issues. He mused to himself that most women would jump at such an opportunity and would want to make it public, yet she was exceptional in her desire to keep it confidential. She considered the reputation of Mr. Li's firm, Li's Group, known for its international fame and wealth, and its boss, Li Pinyin, known for being aloof and cold-blooded. She felt she was no match for him, but reasoned that agreeing to the marriage would at least allow her to live with Mr. Lin, then informed her that she could live there from that point on and mentioned he would be away on a business trip for a week, advising her to communicate any needs to his housekeeper. At Lin Ji's residence, she reflected on how the man had intruded into her life and disrupted her plans. Despite this, she noticed Bao's happiness in his presence and his longing for paternal affection. With a sigh, she conceded that for Bao's sake, she had to accept the man. When she opened the door, Lin Shen, surprised to see her return alone, inquired about Bao's whereabouts. Ji, with a serious demeanor, expressed her desire to share something important. Shen, sensing the gravity of the situation, asked her to elaborate. Ji revealed that the man had found her in Bao, and seeing Bao's attachment to him, she had agreed to live with the man for the time being. With the understanding that they would divorce once Bao reached adulthood, Shen reacted with disapproval, labeling the man as irresponsible for having abandoned them and cautioning Ji against trusting him. She, feeling cornered, explained that she had no other choice as the man was Li Penin, and refusing him would mean losing Bao forever. Shin inquired if she had made up her mind to live there, expressing his intention to become strong enough to protect her and Bao in a couple of years, ensuring that no one would bully them. She confirmed her decision, urging Shin to concentrate on his studies abroad and assuring him that she and Bao would wait for his return. She promised to take care of Bao and herself. Bao, excited to see his mother, exclaimed that his fairy was here and expressed how much he missed her, asking if her luggage was heavy and if she was tired. She affectionately responded that she missed him too. She contemplated her role as the stand-in for the leading role in a film, deciding to memorize the leading role's lines even though she might not have any lines herself. Suddenly, her phone rang, and upon answering, she recognized it was Mr. Hua on the line. He reminded her to arrive at the location by 9 o'clock a.m., and not to make any mistakes again. She assured him that she would not mess up. Bao greeted his mother with a cheerful good morning and informed her that he was going to school. Sunan greeted him back, complimenting him on looking cute that day. Bao mentioned to Shi that Uncle Shin had told him girls like cute boys, which led him to conclude that girls would like him as well. She agreed, acknowledging his logic. She then mused about the number of girls who might become smitten with her little boy. The servant reminded her that it was time for the young master to go to school, to which Ji advised Bao to listen to his teachers. Bao, in turn, told his mother to heed the director's instructions at the filming location. A girl with purple hair taunted Ji, recalling her previous arrogance and now her role as a stand-in, asking if she had any comments. Ji responded confidently, stating that whether she was in a leading role or a stand-in, it was all part of her job, questioning why the girl thought she had descended. The girl with purple hair suggested that Ji should keep a low profile, which prompted Hua to reprimand her, telling Wang Qingqing to watch her language. Qingqing internally decided not to argue with Shi that day, but vowed to herself that she would get Shi kicked out. At that moment, someone called out for Shi, and she promptly responded to the summons. She contemplated the character she was to portray in the film, the general's daughter, which required her to perform numerous action scenes. In one particular scene, her task was simply to mount a horse and jump down. She knew the scene demanded a smooth and impressive performance, a challenge that many actresses might struggle with. She reminded herself that she'd had to execute it flawlessly. As she mounted the horse, she thought about how fortunate she was to have learned horsemanship while living abroad, a skill that was proving useful now. However, things took an unexpected turn when the horse became agitated and she was thrown to the ground, face first. A girl witnessing the incident commented on Shi's fall from the horse. The director was alerted and a boy rushed over, concerned, asking what had happened and if she was all right. Qingqing, observing the scene, thought to herself that she was too naive to be considered a rival. The boy asked Shi if she was okay, to which she replied affirmatively. The director, concerned for her well-being, inquired if she was injured and if she could continue working. She, despite feeling pain in her ankle, insisted she was fine and ready to resume work. Internally, she acknowledged that although she had managed to protect her vital parts, she had still sprained her ankle. The director instructed the crew to bring a more docile horse for Shi. A girl warned Shi that the horse was new and advised her to be cautious. She reassured her that everything was fine. Approaching the horse, she spoke gently, promising not to harm it and suggesting that they should get acquainted with each other first. After preparing herself, she informed the director that she was ready. Upon the director's cue, she mounted the horse and, despite the pain from her previous fall, was determined to complete the scene. A boy observed that even though Ji was injured, she managed to perform the scene perfectly, which he found impressive. The director commended her work, encouraging her to keep it up. After dismounting the horse, Ji wondered about the reason behind the previous horse's fright and considered checking on it. The director praised Ji for her excellent execution of the action scene and told her she could take a break. Ji expressed her gratitude. Meanwhile, Qingqing thought to herself in frustration about Shi's resilience and resolved to have her removed from the theatrical group as soon as possible. Upon returning home late at night, she found herself pondering over whether Bao was asleep, considering Mr. Li Pain and was not at home, and her late arrival might have saddened him. As she noticed the pain and swelling in her foot, she thought about getting some ice cubes to alleviate the discomfort. Ascending the stairs, she was startled by an unexpected sight, leading her to believe there was a thief in the house. To her surprise, she discovered it was Mr. Lee, and questioned his presence since he was supposed to be away on a business trip for a week. Mr. Lee, settling on the sofa, simply stated that his work was done. His attention then turned to Xi's left foot, inquiring about its condition, to which she downplayed the injury as a mere sprain. She suggested that he must be tired and should rest, but Mr. Lee commented on her smile, implying it seemed forced. She internally defended her smile, considering it perfect due to her professional training, yet Mr. Lee seemed to dislike it, even thinking to himself that her smile appeared reluctant. The conversation took a turn when Mr. Lee mentioned that the vase she had broken was a valuable artifact from the Tang dynasty, worth 5 million yuan, leaving Xi in shock. She attempted to brush it off as a joke, but Mr. Lee assured her he was not joking, which only intensified her fear, especially considering the vase's placement next to the stairs. In exchange, marked by tension and disbelief, Mr. Lee informed Eleven that he had placed his vase next to the stairs in his house, questioning if there was any issue with that. She, taken aback, he said that they assured him there was no problem. However, Mr. Lee's next command was abrupt and dismissive. He instructed her to throw the vase out. She was shocked, her voice trembling as she questioned the absurdity of throwing out something as valuable as 5 million yuan. She confronted Mr. Lee about his previous claim of the vase's worth, expressing her frustration and sense of betrayal. Mr. Lee responded with a scoff, revealing his motive for disclosing the vase's value was to prevent her from accidentally breaking another expensive item in his house. As he walked away, he pondered over Ji's apparent unawareness of the significance of this family's name. Meanwhile, she, reflecting on Mr. Lee's unpredictable nature, decided to gather the vase's fragments, the thought of this value causing her heartache. Suddenly, she cried out in pain from an injury and contemplated applying ice to prevent swelling. She lamented the effort she had put into securing the film roll, which she now had to relinquish. Observing from above, Mr. Lee noted Ji's sprained ankle and her need to work the following day, admitting to himself that she looked quite pretty in her silence. The next morning, Bao, upon seeing Mr. Lee, excitedly greeted his father with a good morning. Ji brought in breakfast, and Bao humorously remarked on his mother's honey returning. Ji, however, thought to herself with a mix of humor and disdain, that she would prefer to remain single forever than be with a man like Mr. Lee. Bao inquired excitedly about his father's return, to which Mr. Lee responded that he had come back the previous night. Bao expressed regret for having gone to bed early, missing the chance to wait up for his father. Mr. Lee assured him that he would inform him ahead of time on his next return. Bao's joy was evident when he heard this promise. She then reminded Bao that it was time for breakfast and that he needed to eat quickly to avoid being late for school. Bao invited his father to join them for breakfast and questioned where his father's breakfast was. She, caught off guard, wondered how she was supposed to know since she hadn't prepared it. Nevertheless, she offered her own noodles to Mr. Lee, internally considering it a compensation for the 5 million yuan. Bao encouraged his father to try the noodles, confident that he would be impressed by his mother's cooking. She, however, was left contemplating whether she was raising an oblivious child, as she would now have to go without breakfast herself. After telling Bao to continue eating, she announced she was leaving for work. Before departing, she gave Bao a goodbye kiss and reminded him to behave well at school. As she was about to leave, Bao pointed out that she hadn't given his father a goodbye kiss. She pondered the idea of giving a goodbye kiss but quickly dismissed it, concerned for her own well-being. She then voiced her opinion that such gestures were not customary among adults. Bao, her son, innocently pointed out that she had given his godfather a goodbye kiss, which led to Mr. Lee, who was listening, to wonder about Ji's past relationships. Ji, trying to keep the morning routine on track, urged Bao not to talk too much during breakfast and reminded him of the school day ahead. As she was about to leave, Bao wished her well, prompting Mr. Lee to question him about his godfather. Bao's playful response about having more than one godfather left Mr. Lee feeling underestimated and agitated as he realized Ji might have had multiple partners. Bao, noticing Mr. Lee's rising anger, asked if he was all right, to which Mr. Lee abruptly decided it was time for school. Bao internally acknowledged Mr. Lee's jealousy and resolved to endure it for his mother's happiness. The director expressed his frustration and decided to terminate the contract, citing his intolerance for the leading actress, Song Yenrun, any longer. Hua attempted to pacify director Wang, mentioning Yenrun's busy schedule as a possible reason for her absence. She'd be curious about the director's anger and inquired about it, and learned from another actress that Yenrun's lack of presence, except for the booth ceremony, had caused the rest of the cast to face criticism. Director Won then called Shi over and upon confirming that she knew the script, unexpectedly instructed her to take over the lead role. She, taken aback, questioned if she was indeed the one chosen to act, to which Won affirmed, declaring her the new heroine of the movie. Hua interjected, reminding the director of the existing contract with Yenrun as the lead. However, director Wang dismissed the concern, stating that Yenrun's busy schedule meant she need not return, and urged Ji to prepare for the role. Hua pleaded with director Wang to postpone the scenes requiring Yenrun, emphasizing her popularity and busy schedule. He relayed that the movie producer had suggested shooting the stand-in parts first and saving the main scenes for Yenrun's return. However, director Wang was adamant about starting the shoot immediately. Ji, seizing the opportunity, assured the director of her readiness. The director called for attention and commenced filming. After completing the first scene, Ji wondered about her performance but decided to rest before seeking feedback. Director Wang, impressed, complimented Ji on her professional performance, acknowledging her training. Meanwhile, King arrived on set visibly upset upon realizing that Ji had assumed the leading role. She confronted Ji, advising her to maintain a low profile and questioning her audacity in taking over Yenrun's role. Ji defended herself against King's accusation of stealing the role, pointing out that she was following director Wang's instructions. King dismissed the director's words as mere anger, ridiculing Ji for being delusional about becoming the heroine. Ji challenged King's assumption about her insignificance, which left King flustered and questioning Ji's confidence. Internally, King speculated if Ji had a secret benefactor. Ji warned King against any further sabotage, hinting at a past incident where she found needles in her saddle, which could implicate someone if investigated. King denied any wrongdoing, but Shi's revelation about the needles and fingerprints suggested she had evidence of foul play that could involve the police. In a heated exchange, King vehemently denied understanding Shi's accusations and declared that conversing with her was a waste of time. Shi, reflecting on the confrontation, concluded that King's anger might be an admission of guilt regarding the needles found in the saddle. Later that night, as she was heading home, director Wang offered her a ride concerned about her agent's absence. She declined, citing proximity to her home and the desire to keep her living arrangements with Li Peinan private. Upon arriving home, she found Bao asleep, toy in hand, which led her to contemplate Li Peinan's suggestion that Bao needed a father figure. As she moved the toy, Bao, half asleep, expressed a wish for his mother to show the same affection to his father as she did to him. She reflected on the need for a father figure in her son's life and wondered about his dreams. After giving Bao a goodnight kiss, she stepped outside where Mr. Li confronted her about her late return. Startled by his sudden appearance, she exclaimed in surprise. Mr. Li, questioning whether he was frightening her, received a response from Shi explaining her alarm at his unexpected presence. He then repeated his inquiry about her late arrival, indicating his concern for her well-being. She expressed her frustration about the long hours at work which often left her without a taxi to get home. Mr. Li seemed surprised that she didn't own a car, to which she responded with a hint of sarcasm about our company's policy of not providing cars to employees they considered unimportant. The conversation then shifted to Bao, who had mentioned that Mr. Li's car resembled one that his uncle, Lin Shen, had rented. Jida clarified that Lin Shen had only rented the car to please Bao, who liked that particular model and had falsely claimed ownership of it. She mused to herself that if she could afford such a luxury, she wouldn't have to work so hard. Mr. Li advised her to return home early to inform Bao if she was going to be late, mentioning that Bao had been waiting for her. She replied that she had already texted Bao, which led Mr. Li to question why he wasn't informed as well. She playfully retorted that there was no need to inform someone who wouldn't wait for her, prompting Mr. Li to grab her hand and challenge her assumption. He internally questioned why he would stay up if he wasn't waiting for her, calling her a stupid woman in his thoughts. She'd wondered if Mr. Lei was upset because she came home late and realized that her contract had a clause that required her to work late hours, leading her to consider purchasing a car as a practical solution to her transportation issues. The next morning, King announced Lin Ji's arrival with a hint of mockery, warning her not to overestimate herself as she would be embarrassed now that Song Yenrun had returned, would likely replace her in the theatrical group. She, confused, asked what Kinking was talking about. Kinking explained that Song Yenran and the producer had arrived early that morning, implying that she's temporary position as the heroine was about to end. The producer then addressed everyone, stating that although Yenran had delayed the work for some reasons, she was now back and he hoped everyone would concentrate on completing the movie as planned. Yenran apologized for the delay and offered to treat everyone to afternoon tea for a month as compensation. A lady in the group reassured Yenran that it was okay since they had been filming the supporting role scenes, so her absence hadn't caused any delays. Kinky praised Yenran for living up to her reputation in showbiz, and another lady commented on how humble and sincere Yenran was for apologizing without any pretense. Director Wang instructed everyone not to just stand around and alerted them that the shooting would commence in 15 minutes. A person reassured Yenran that it was fine to be there and mentioned that while Director Wang is strict, he doesn't mean any harm, so she shouldn't take his words to heart. The person then excused themselves to return to the firm, advising Yenran to take care on the road. Ji, observing Yenran, thought to herself that Yenran appeared even more beautiful in person than on television. Director Wang asked Ji if she had written the notes herself, to which Ji, smiling, confirmed that she did write notes when reciting her lines as it helped her understand her role better. Wang acknowledged her perceptiveness but informed her that since Song Yenran had returned, Ji could no longer be the heroine of the movie. However, he reassured her that he had another role for her, which, although not as prominent as the heroine's, was certainly a step up from being a stand-in. She expressed her gratitude to Director Wang, who then questioned if she was dissatisfied. Wang thought to himself that despite experiencing a rise and fall, she didn't seem unhappy at all, noting that no experienced actor could remain as calm as she did, especially since she was just a newcomer. She responded that there was no reason for dissatisfaction. After all, she had progressed from a stand-in to a supporting role. Director Wang reflected on the newcomer's suitability for the entertainment industry, believing that with hard work, she had a bright future ahead. He then informed Ji that he had secured a supporting role for her, which he felt was fitting. He emphasized that if she could grasp the essence of the supporting role, it would leave a lasting impression on the audience. When Ji inquired about the specific role, Wang revealed it was Moon Manly. He gave her 3 days to study the role, expressing his hope that she would embody the true character of Moon Manly. Ji contemplated the character of Moon Manly, a girl who, despite her impoverished background and the loss of her family in battle, carried an air of arrogance due to the Emperor's favor. She would fall in love with the hero at first sight and become obsessed with him, but her mistakes would lead to her demise in an unfamiliar place. She realized the complexity of playing a villainous role, understanding that it could either bring her disdain or acclaim from the audience. Meanwhile, a lady informed Mr. Lee that the procedures for purchasing a car were complete and inquired whether he would drive it back himself or have his driver do it. To her surprise, Mr. Lee instructed her to give the car to Lin Shi. The lady, taken aback, questioned his decision, but Mr. Lee asked if she had any complaints. Assuring him she had none, she agreed to have the car delivered to Shi. The lady pondered whether to inform Mr. Lee that Lin Shi was currently in trouble, considering the car was initially thought to be for the young master, but turned out to be a gift for Shi. Mr. Lee, seemingly unaware of the situation, prompted the lady to proceed with the task. The lady approached Mr. Lee with a concern, reporting that she had heard Ms. Lin Shi was facing difficulties. She explained that the renowned actress Song Yenran had taken away Ji's chance to be the heroine through nepotism. The lady questioned Mr. Lee about their course of action, considering he was planning to gift Ji an expensive car, which suggested he wouldn't tolerate any mistreatment towards her. Mr. Lee's response was unexpectedly indifferent. He simply said to do nothing. This reaction puzzled the lady as it was contrary to what she had anticipated. She easily asked if she should at least communicate something to the theatrical group, to which Mr. Lee again responded with a firm no. The lady acquiesced, but internally she was baffled by Mr. Lee's apparent disregard for Ji's situation, especially given his intention to present her with an expensive car. She found Mr. Lee's behavior enigmatic and unpredictable. Yenran acknowledged Lin Ji, thanking her for covering as a stand-in during her absence. She humbly accepted the gratitude, stating it was part of her job. Yenran then mentioned that Ji was fortunate as Director Wang had taken a liking to her and offered her a new role, encouraging her to continue working hard and to reach out if she needed any assistance. Hua entered the conversation, questioning Yenrun's friendliness towards Shi, whom he dismissed as merely a stand-in. Yenrun defended her actions, explaining that Director Wang held Shi in high regard and it was only appropriate for her to greet Shi personally. Hua persisted in his disdain, claiming she was a nobody and not even fit to be Yenrun's servant. Yenrun chided him for being mean and cautioned that such remarks could be misconstrued by reporters as marginalizing a colleague. As they conversed, a luxurious car arrived, drawing exclamations from onlookers about its opulence and speculations that it belonged to Yenrun. A boy assumed it was Yenrun's, while a girl agreed, saying only Yenrun could match such a car. She, observing the scene, thought the car must be exorbitantly priced and that Yenrun must have earned a substantial amount of money. The crowd was puzzled when the car stopped in front of Shi, leading her to wonder about Yenrun's intentions. Yenrun approached the gathering, curious about the commotion, and a girl asked if the car was hers. A person then stepped out of the car and invited Ms. Lin to get in, shocking the onlookers who realized the car was for Ji. Yenrun was left bewildered, questioning how Ji could afford such a luxury which was beyond even her own means.